Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA. It's early on a Sunday morning, and I'm glad that you're with us. We have approaching 200 live viewers that have been standing by and waiting for the start of this live stream, and we'll have a bunch more by the time we start at the top of the hour. The local time is 7:48 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday morning, September 15th, 2024. How are we doing? How are you doing? Yes, we will begin our program at the top of the hour, but we're spending the first 12 minutes live chatting with folks, asking where they are viewing from. And we are 5x5. Thank you, Garrett and Brian and Don and Kirk and Rick, all saying 5x5, which means loud and clear, apparently. Where are you viewing from this morning? Can I say hi to a number of you? It's an unusual time for us, but maybe we'll end up really liking this one. Maybe 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings is what we should do this coming winter. Rogue Valley, Oregon. Albany, Oregon. Bryce from Tasmania. Hello, Bryce. Fresno, California, Chicago, Illinois, Falls Church, Virginia, New Mexico, Boone, North Carolina, New Jersey, the Netherlands, Houston, Texas, Bellingham, Washington, Ronan, Montana, that's Sky Cooley. Good morning, Sky. Salem, Oregon. Jocelyn is from Quebec, Ontario, Canada, Kingston, Oklahoma, Nampa, Idaho, Sandy, Utah, Cambridge, UK, hello, Vanessa, Butler, Missouri, Houston, Texas, New Mexico, just grabbing things as they scroll by. Kevin is in the Netherlands. Ana Rita is from Portugal. Ana Rita, you have been with us almost every episode. I'm curious about you by now. How long have you been interested in geology? How much are you willing to share with us about who you are? You are really into this stuff. Ana Rita in Portugal. There's Google Earth by Glenn from Liberty Lake, Washington. Hello, Glenn. Antioch, California. Arlington, Texas. Chesapeake, Virginia. Looking for more exotic locations. There's Leslie in Boxborough, Massachusetts. Hello, Leslie. Petaluma, California, the chicken capital of the world. You heard it here first. Penticton, BC, that's British Columbia in Canada. Tacoma, Washington. Helsinki, Finland. Hello. Janesville, Wisconsin, that's Michael. Selwood, Oregon. Bixby, Oklahoma. Huntsville, Ontario. Wintergreen, California. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Hello, Alec. I don't think I've seen you before or seen your name or place. Let's go. Oslo, Norway. Terrific. Talk about Seattle Seahawks and an NFL team. Not our topic. Swansea, Wales. Translated to Abertawe Simuru. I tried. Hamlin, Germany. Williams, Oregon. A few more. Hans is in the Netherlands. Jason is in Las Vegas, Nevada. Happy to view live. Happier that you're here, Jason. People talking to Sky. Sauber's in Bryce Canyon in southern Utah. Good morning, Bryce. Good morning, Sauber. Bryce, the rock licker, I have not heard from. He's down starting his graduate program in Flagstaff, Arizona. I need to text him today and see how things are going. David is in the Yukon. Let's do 3 more. Grandpa Carl from Granger, Washington. Kitty is in the Netherlands. Plenty of the Netherlands people. And we are all missing Itchy Boots, Norley, hoping that she starts posting videos sometime in the next month. That would be delightful to see. And she posts typically on Sundays. Okay, very good. Well, I need to start thinking carefully. You know that our guest is very, very special. Let's do a couple quick things just to get the old stations warmed up. I don't think I'll take the time once we start, so I'm reminding you early birds that papers are available at Cascades in the upper right-hand corner of nickzentner.com, and there are some new papers tied to today's episode. We are going to look at some maps, and I'll do a little bit here. There's shelf cam, which I like better than corner cam. Corner cam is this, I don't know, that shot out the window is less appealing to me these days for whatever reason. So I think we're going to do this instead while you wait to take my walk. And I think I need to do that. I'm itching to get going. I'm extra jazzed. Headphones. Let's say for just thinking about too much now. Come on, I need to calm down. Calm down, boy. Calm down. You're just talking. You're just talking like normal. It's just another guest. That's it. It's just another guest. A few more hellos, and then I will take my little walk and email our guest and get her going on Zoom. Yeah, we don't need to talk about Randall Carlson here, please. Thank you. Daddy is excited. Yes. A couple more. Where are you viewing from before I really lock into what we're doing here today? Great Yarmouth, UK. Yeah, let's get some distant lands here, if you don't mind. Let me scroll back. Cincinnati, Ohio. Bishop's Stortford. I don't know where that is, Vic. John's in Spokane, Washington. Columbus, North Carolina! Exclamation point. New Mexico. There's Kirk in Philomath, Oregon. Marysville, Washington. Kirk is in Sweden. Jack is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Warwick. That's George. El Cerrito, California. That's Chaya Chaya. Australia. Hello, Miko. Highlands Ranch, Colorado. Dana Point, California. Honey Greg is now in Spokane. Hello, Greg. You're making the rounds. Beecham, Oregon. Sherman, Texas. Amity, Oregon. And finally, Zweisper Mapt is in Treusdorf, Germany, right next to the Cologne airport. Hello. And Karin is originally from Germany, so that's a perfect way to stop that. And I say thank you so much for watching live. We will get started in 5 minutes. Hold the line, please, while I connect with Karin. Thank you. Okay, boy. You're going to start a new meeting. And you're going to invite Karin Sigloch. And there that goes. Hot mic. Good morning. How are you? I'm doing well. Thank you. Boy, you sound crystal clear, and you look real good too. How about on your end? Are we doing okay? Okay, I'll keep talking a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Are you home or at the office? Well, thank you, Anna. Is anybody else there on a Sunday evening? Oh my God. Oh boy, well, we're going to blow your cover here today. Okay. Okay, nice. Well, thanks so much. I think I'm ready to get going. Are you comfortable, and will you have a few slides ready to go to share? Is that the plan? Yes. Yep. That's fine. And we'll just play it by ear. But I'll do my 5 minutes or less to get us going, and then we'll just go. Okay. Okay. Great. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Let's begin. Thank you for joining us here. Those that are watching live, and we have approaching 500 live viewers from around the world, as well as so many more of you watching this recorded or replayed video after the fact. It's a special thrill to have our guest today, and it's not the first time that she's been with us. Believe it or not, this is the fourth time Karin Sigloch from the south of France is joining us here in this little YouTube channel. So she's one of the most bright minds in all of science, and yet she can see what's going on here, and either she has a problem saying no, or she really does see some value in what we're doing. Regardless, we have her, and we're going to go to her in just a couple of minutes. But let me set the stage, please, if you would allow me to do so. First of all, this little Idaho geology miniseries continues. I think this is the 10th episode. And so we will be referring to prior episodes in this series, and Karin has been watching these, and so she's been kind of kept up to date on what we've been doing. And now we are out in the Pacific looking at oceanic plates. And who better to ask about ocean plates in the Pacific than Karin Sigloch? But we're going to start today in Wyoming. We're going to start with the Yellowstone mantle plume, or the Yellowstone hot spot. We'll just go back and forth using both those terms, hot spot and mantle plume. I have some basic questions about the Yellowstone hot spot, and it does pertain to the Pacific Northwest, involving the birth of the Cascades indirectly. But we'll just kind of riff there. But the idea is, and it's a very, very loose, unrehearsed plan, is that we're eventually going to leave Wyoming in our conversation. We're going to work our way west and get out to the Pacific, which means we're going back in time, further and further back in time. We'll be back in the Eocene, off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, in the ocean. Resurrection plate, question mark, Orcus plate, spreading ridges, triple junctions, subduction zones. We've been thinking about that the last couple of times. But then I have no doubt that we will zoom out at some point, maybe a lot of today, to the entire planet. Why not? And Baja, BC, we're here. I wasn't planning, when I started this in early August, I wasn't planning to go to Baja, BC and eventually go to Karin, but we are here. So since we're here, let's go to our guest, get her involved, and we will just be off and running. Thank you for being with us. Karin, how are you today?
Hey, Nick, I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing just great, thank you. I always chicken out when I try to pronounce the name of your university or the name of your town. Would you mind?
So I work for the CNRS, which is the French National Center for Scientific Research, and also for the Université Côte d'Azur. So that's the University of the French Riviera.
And is there a nearby city that we would recognize?
Yeah, I mean, Nice is the real city, but we're in Sophia Antipolis, which is a utopian founding 50 years ago or so.
Oh my
That's
God.
a city of enlightenment and learning and science, is Sophia Antipolis. Yes.
Well, we are in rare company then. My humble little, backwards Ellensburg, Washington, connecting to a place like that. It's a special thrill. So thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. Yellowstone Hot Spot. So I've been teaching about the Yellowstone Hot Spot my whole career here in the Pacific Northwest. I say it's a stationary mantle plume with a moving North American plate over the top of it, and yet it seems like in the last 20, 30 years there's been debate about not only the Yellowstone mantle plume, but mantle plumes around the world. What is the debate, and where do you stand most recently with that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, there's several debates. One is, the main observation of hot spots or mantle plumes is that they have they're very long-lived sites of volcanism, and they seem to be stationary, and they seem to be away from plate boundaries usually. So it's the only kind of volcanism that's very, very long-lived, much more long-lived than an arc volcano, and sitting still and away from a plate boundary. So that then the question is, how can that be? How can it sit stationary? And actually, probably the most striking thing observation that goes with these is that in the beginning of their lives, they have these huge eruptions, these flood basalts. So that's the beginning stage of a mantle plume. And so those are just enormous volumes, like the Columbia River basalts, or you've been talking about Silesia. And so that's a question, where does that come from? Because that also doesn't happen at plate boundaries. So the hypothesis is that this comes from the deepest possible source, which is the core mantle boundary, or at least that the heat comes from that place. And that's why it can be so stationary, this hotspot, because the deepest mantle is the least moving layer in the Earth system. So that's the hypothesis, and it's physically very plausible that there should be plumes. So there should be plumes a priori. But it's been very hard to observe them in situ. So for people like me who do images of the mantle, it's been very challenging. And so this has been an involving debate of, can we really see them? And then they didn't look like we thought they looked. And so then, is that really what we're looking for? What does that mean?
So there's a 2-page piece that is at the website that you shared with me yesterday. So viewers, there are 3 new papers that I've added for this episode. One is a brand new preprint with Karin and her co-author Mitch Mahalanuk up in British Columbia, and we will go there. But there's a little mantle plume thing that you wrote, Karin, 5 years ago or whatever. What was the gist of that piece? And that's the context. You're trying to add your data to this ongoing discussion. And how can you have a Farallon plate subducting in amongst this Yellowstone heat source?
Yeah, I mean, Yellowstone is unusual. So in my, the other half of what I do is actually trying to image mantle plumes around the world. And so a mantle plume is about the opposite of a subducting plate. It really is in many ways. And so it also happens usually in the exact opposite places. So almost all the places where where hotspots, like hot candidates for these kinds of volcanisms, where they sit, it's far removed from subduction zones. And that's by design of the Earth, we think, because when a flood basalt comes up, it creates its own ocean. It pushes away, the subduction zones. But Yellowstone is maybe the only one that's clearly not like that. There's much more subduction. There's much more cold subducted material in the mantle under Yellowstone than there is anything warm that you would see, which you would expect to in a mantle plume place.
So thinking back to earlier episodes in this series, Spencer Fuston, for instance, has a subducting slab going all the way under North America as far east as Georgia. Now, maybe it's a latitude thing, but that seems to be a conflicting idea in my mind of this huge cookie sheet that's going to Georgia, and yet we how can we have a space for this mantle plume to come up through? Is it burning a hole through the Farallon plate, or is it separate somehow?
Well, maybe I can share a slide so that we talk about the same geometry. Let's share this. Can you see this?
We can. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a tomographic image of the north and western quarter of mainly the U.S. You can see hardly any Canada here. So what you can see is the topography and bathymetry of the Cordillera. So where we have this steep step, that's the coast. So this is the Pacific plate, and back here the little Farallon plate that remains, the Juan de Fuca plate. And so and what's imaged as seismically fast, so which is slab. And here we can be very sure about it because the subduction, this is the Cascadia subduction zone, and so we can see the plate is going in here and descending.
Beautiful.
And descending to halfway down to the core mantle boundary to 1,800 kilometers or so depth. And then just for visual orientation, there's this vertical line, and that starts from Yellowstone, the location of Yellowstone, and gets just vertically down. And so in the 3D rendering, you can see that it just a classical mantle plume is supposed to be a vertical chimney, a cylinder that comes from the core mantle boundary, so from 3,000 kilometers depth, and just rises like a chimney and goes to the surface, and there it makes its volcanism. And you can see that if that were the case here, it would have to go right through this huge pile of subduction.
Yes. So, so that is the story, or is there a tear in the plate, or do you want to go in that direction? Like this caught my eye long ago, and I can't quite marry the two concepts in the same image. Can you?
I mean, there are many tears in this plate. It depends on what scale you look at this. If you look at it like this, it looks like it's definitely a coherent subduction system. Right? It goes in at the surface, it dips, it goes down. There are some odd things about it. It becomes much more voluminous as it goes down. So up here, it actually has the thickness of a single lithospheric plate, about 100 kilometers. But then it becomes much more massive. And then the longer you stare at it, you see it has other features that it has a lot more structure that isn't just simply a sheet descending. So for example, here in the foreground, you see there's some blob. There's also some blobbiness here. Spencer was talking about, so he's unraveling, this slab up to here. All of this, but not this. By the way, I mean, I just want to say, you said the slab is going to Georgia. That's not the case.
Okay.
This slab is under the Pacific Northwest that he's unraveling.
Okay. Can you stop your share for a second?
Yeah.
I wanted to go here, so thanks for leading me there. How do I say this? What are some fundamental differences between how you're acquiring this tomographic data and other groups that, for instance, Spencer? I mean, we were at that Penrose conference together last summer. We're eating our scrambled eggs together every morning, Karin. We're talking. Johnny Woo's right there. And you're saying that slab does not go to Georgia.
Yeah, I don't know, I was actually wondering about that in that moment, whether Spencer might have gotten momentarily confused, or I mean, what you did discuss, I mean, there's no difference. One of the slabs that Spencer was unraveling was the one that you just saw. So that was among the half dozen models. And so all the tomography groups, that's not Spencer's group, that's my community. So for example, Gene Humphreys, they produced a very nice model at the time. The MIT group, they all look more or less like what I showed you. But what Spencer did is just the can I show this once again?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he says, okay, this is clearly thicker. Can you see my cursor?
I can.
Yeah. So this is clear, this dark blue stuff. Let me do a full screen.
Mm-hmm.
This dark blue stuff is clearly thicker than a single sheet of lithosphere. It's clearly thicker than what's going in here.
Yes.
So it's somehow thickened. So I would say it's like ribbon candy, what you would compare this ribbon candy, right? So this blue stuff here is something like this.
Yeah.
I think Spencer is agnostic about how exactly it's folded, but he's determined to unfold it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can formally do that, and that's what he did. He plotted that on a map. Right, he just took this and formally, I mean, you can always say, I think there's that much plate in here. I'm going to unrestore a cross section.
Yes.
And sorry, I just have to. Okay, and then you can formally plot it on a map. But I don't know if he was really suggesting that the slab was ever in Georgia. I mean, you discussed it in this way. You said it's abducted, and we know the trench was somewhere here at that time. There's no question about it. In absolute space, the trench was somewhere here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe here. I don't know. And the slab is here. So I would just say, well, this plopped down here. But you and Spencer were discussing it as if it had gone to Georgia and then somehow had gone back again. So I don't know if that was a misunderstanding or if that's really what he was suggesting, because we were discussing flat subduction. But in any case, there's no ambiguity. There is absolutely no. This slab is not under Georgia. That's for sure.
Okay. Well, yeah. If you want to go with the more slides, great. If you want to stop your share, I have an idea for how we would move on from here. Already some big moments. Thank you. Did I hear you say 10 minutes ago, hotspots are rarely at a plate boundary? Is that generally what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the case of the Pacific Northwest, in this series, it feels like everybody is comfortable with the Yellowstone mantle plume existing far older than 17 million years ago, being out in the Pacific Basin and being on a plate boundary. How are you feeling about that?
It's really interesting that seems so universally accepted in your series here. I don't know if that's in the geologic community in the Pacific Northwest, if that's a consensus. I would say normally the Columbia River flood basalts, which happened 17 million years ago, are considered the initiation of the Yellowstone phenomenon.
Yeah.
And since then there has been a time progressive track that is the Snake River Plain, and that ends in Yellowstone. And it's not that the hotspot has moved. This track is there because the plate has moved above the hotspot like this, and it's always burning. It's always burning. It's making its burn marks as the plate moves. So, but yes, I mean, for other plumes as well, there have been suggestions that they come in pulses. They come in episodes. It's rare. There are rare examples that where, for example, Kerguelen in the Indian Ocean, which is a huge hotspot, is first erupted 120 million years ago, made a huge plateau, still one of the biggest ones, maybe the third biggest one. And then 20 million years ago again, so 100 million years later, there was another plateau stage. So you could say, oh, maybe Yellowstone is like that. Maybe it has several plot basalts. So that Silesia was a previous one. But then, for example, Stephen Johnston has been saying that Carmax at 70 million years was another one. So it's a very prolific flat basalt producer, this hotspot.
Oh, this is fun. So yeah, we can go a bunch of directions. And by the way, I'm going to keep trying to ask questions about our neighborhood, and it's perfectly reasonable, Karin, to go, look, I'm dealing with planet Earth, all right? I don't know all these details about what's going on in your county, so back off. So,
we may get to that point.
Yeah. But the series, it isn't. We started with the Idaho batholith, and then we work our way further away. And I think it's time for us to go a little bit further back. Are your buds giving you trouble? Do you want to take those out and just see if it works better? Are you getting some feedback?
No, the quality is very good. It's just that they're falling out. But
Okay.
let's keep
I
going.
have the same problem. Sometimes I just put duct tape on my frickin' head to keep them in there. Okay. Can we go to the Northeast Pacific? I've got some images. I don't know if I'm brave enough, but I spent some time this morning. I got up early, looked at Edward Collette, former graduate student of yours, and Edward Clinette was at our Penrose conference. I did
Yeah.
some little snapshots of his movie, basically 55 million years ago until 42 million years ago, just looking carefully at what he was doing, I assume with your supervision, with resurrection plate, 2 spreading ridges or 1, and then when does Siletzia show up? Can we start with that? Just, you have an Orcus plate. How is the Orcus plate different than the resurrection plate that we've been talking about, or is it
Yeah.
different?
Well, the Orcus plate is inferred differently. So, the Orcus plate we inferred in 2013 as being inevitable as a spacer between the eastward subduction system, that's the Farallon plate, and the westward subduction system that's also clearly there, because there are 2 big deep slab walls, and there's a space in between. And it's much like the Caribbean plate, where the Atlantic is going in, the Pacific is going in, and the Caribbean is the space in between. Right? So it's inferred from the slabs. And that was in 2013.
Yeah.
And it was then only in 2020 that I somehow remembered this resurrection plate paper, or maybe even Edward found it, I don't know. And the Heusler et al. Great paper from 2003.
Mm-hmm.
That was very inspirational at the time, but I couldn't connect it with anything at the time. And so then I was wondering, so what is how is that related? Because it had to be in that space that the Orcus plate was occupying, and then I realized that whereas this Orcus plate is always there. I mean, it's there from the beginning of this archipelago. So it's as old as the Farallon plate. It's more than 180 million years old.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. So it was always sitting there, but then it was sitting out in the Proto-Pacific Ocean. But then slowly North America comes along and overrides all the subduction zones. And when it arrives at that little plate, approaching the Farallon Trench, which is still sitting offshore, then this little plate has to go away somehow. So it gets overridden in a very oblique way.
Mm-hmm.
And that at that stage, the last little triangle that's left, with North America being here, of that Orcus plate. So that's the resurrection
That's
plate.
the resurrection.
It's like the resurrection plate is the dying stage of the Orcus plate, which is much older.
Okay, this is perfect. I want to do a little bit more verbally, and then I can maybe feel the viewers going, I am lost. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. You're doing this and this. So, yeah, we'll go to some of your slides. Maybe we'll do my little screenshots, and we'll just keep fleshing out this, because it seems like we've been building towards this without really knowing it. So, doubly subducting. You seem to really like that concept, that it's not uncommon to have an ocean plate that has subduction both on both sides of the plate, Caribbean and Orcus. Does that make sense to you? Are you, by restoring these slabs from the mantle and getting them to the surface, is that a common thing that you're finding, that when you get these slabs back to the surface, you do have often double subduction?
Well, it's not just. Let me just.
Yeah.
Am I sharing something here? No.
No, I don't know what happened there, but we're
Are you
back.
seeing something? No.
Yeah.
Well, first, it's not. You don't need slabs to find this, because the present day Earth likes to do this a lot. So let me share this. So, we have at least three series examples of this currently.
Beautiful.
And maybe arguably the Mediterranean could be a fourth one. And if we look at this, so there's two here, the Caribbean, and down here the Scotia Sea South Sandwich. What's
Wow.
happening? So in either case, it's the Atlantic that's subducting in one place, and the Pacific domain, it's not exactly the Pacific, but it's basically the Pacific,
Yeah.
is going in the other direction. And in this place is that the Pacific is subducting in this direction, and the Indian Ocean domain, which was formerly the Tethys Ocean, is subducting to here. And it just seems that the Earth likes to do that. It's a very good way of getting rid of oceanic plates.
Hmm.
It's a very efficient way of cooling the mantle, which is what
Mm-hmm.
subduction is for. So clearly, this happens.
Okay, so the Orcus, do you have a map handy that shows that same pattern with your Orcus plate at some moment in the past?
Yeah. Well, I'll first show you, this is the slabs under North America. So, I mean, if we look from the top, this here is, it's not shown from the surface. That's why we don't see this whole subduction system that we were just looking at, the
Yes.
dipping thing, because it's cut off and we only see what's deeper than 700 kilometers. So this is the deep part of this Northwest Pacific Farallon slab.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the remainder of what's there. And if we do the inside out view, as if we sat in the core of the Earth and looking up, then it looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so the deepest stuff is now in the foreground. So that's this red purple. And so it's the deepest, so it's presumably the oldest. And you can see that at this really deep level, the plates of the slabs are very organized.
Mm-hmm.
They are only in a few places. They are very linearly organized. Um, and uh, those are these slab walls, which are difficult to envision building in any other way than having a trench sit here for a long time, depositing slab that just settles in place. And if you try to imagine other ways of building it, it becomes quite, well, I'd say it becomes contrived. Because you need a long time to deposit so much lithosphere. And well, it seems to all pile up. Okay. And so, I mean, then clearly there are two subductions going on at the same time because they are at the same depth and well
Yes.
removed.
Yes.
And because you have to source a lot of material, it's very likely that this subduction comes from this side. So
Mm-hmm.
feeding this slab is all this domain is going into there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other slab is fed from this side. That's then further becomes a necessity because we know that the Farallon plate was spreading here. So it has to subduct into in the nearest slab. So this is clearly Farallon plate. Right. And then the way we reconstruct if you go back far enough in time, North America is sitting here far in the east. And so then there's ocean in between that subducts into these slabs as North America moves towards the slabs like this. So that's westward subduction.
Yeah, let's keep going with this, but I'm just going to interject verbally. Viewers, I'm reminding the longtime viewers that this is not our first time with Karin, and yes, we're looking at this major slab wall under the east coast of present-day North America. Yes, that's the westward subduction story. Yes, that's the major collision between insular superterrain and North America, which I think Karin and Mitch like as maybe 140 million years ago as opposed to Basil's 100 million years ago. We're not really going... Yeah, okay, 150. We're not really going in that direction today. If you feel like we're slipping back into that old discussion, I'm not interested in doing much with that. And I'm also like... I'm just trying to go a little bit younger in this story, and I know that Karin is heading in that direction, but I just felt like I wanted to reconnect with the viewers a bit. So yeah, we're trying to add this Orcus plate into this story? I know that's where you're going, Karin, so please continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we agree that we have to put some trenches here somehow, and because else we cannot deposit all this slab in this one place, and then there's a space in between, and that's the space that I talked of is like the Caribbean
Yeah.
that keeps these two subduction zones separate. So
Okay.
so it must have looked like this, long ago at the time that we were looking at. So here's basically a transcription of what we just looked at. These are the locations of where these slab walls are. At a time when North America was still far in the east.
Can you go full
So there
screen
was,
on this one? This is a good one. This is one of your new figures.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Yeah, right.
So we know that there's a Farallon plate here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how wide, how big it is. We only know that a Pacific plate is being born, and that's the only thing that survives. And at that time, the Pacific plate here is very narrow.
Mm.
So we know the Farallon plate should at least have been, this wide, and it reached to somewhere here. We don't know any further. Now, logically, it has to reach to the next slab because it has to
Mm-hmm.
subduct somewhere. So we have
Mm-hmm.
to stretch it to the next slab, which is this one. This is the one under the Pacific Northwest that we started our discussion with. And this is a bit questionable. There may not have been subduction here, but it's hard to say.
Yeah.
So let's not worry about that. And
Okay.
then because there's North America here and there's still seafloor here, and North America is now moving. We know it moved all the way till it arrives here. So in order for it to move, somehow this ocean has to get out of the way. So
Mm-hmm.
it subducts into this slab. And you can see that at this point, so this is what's in between here, that's the Orcas plate.
That's the Orcas, yes. Hmm. And our resurrection discussion is just, as Mike was saying last time, it seems like the resurrection is just the last gasp of the Orcas. Well, hell, you just said it 20 minutes ago. Am I viewing that correctly? And wasn't Mike talking about the resurrection being was formerly all Kula, and then you somehow break off a piece of the Kula to get resurrection? Are you saying something totally different here?
Yeah, yes. So
Yeah.
so the cooler plate, we can just quickly go, we can just go back. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, from these okay, so how do I say this? You can, so from these slabs, you can infer that this plate has existed as long as these slabs were subducting there, right?
Yes.
Because we can see that these slabs have a distance, and the age where they start being deposited there is also the age where the space was sitting there.
Right.
And it so happens that, the Atlantic started spreading for real around 170 million years ago. It started
Mm-hmm.
200 million years ago. So maybe the subduction started 200 million years ago. We also know that the Farallon plate is at least 180 million years ago. So it just looks like everything around that time, this system springs into being at once. The Atlantic starts opening, the Pacific is reconfiguring, making this, where's my cursor, making this Pacific plate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we know that the Orcas plate is there. Now, the the resurrection plate was inferred completely differently. It's inferred from these two sweeps of magmatism, or Mike was arguing it's only maybe just one
Yeah.
from Alaska southward. Others say it also from the Pacific Northwest northward, and the interpretation that means there's a spreading ridge or two spreading ridges making landfall on North America, right? Now, looking at this, it actually comes out a bit different as plate boundaries, because
Yeah.
it turns out that the boundary between the Farallon and this resurrection plate, for the longest time at least, it's a subduction zone.
Ah.
However, however, it becomes very messy, obviously, as this plate gets overridden. So who knows what they when plates get are almost overridden. We know they break up, they fracture. So in the end, it may well have been something rich like. I mean, for magmatism to happen, you need some window into the asthenosphere, right? You need a
Yeah.
wound in the lithosphere.
Yes.
And in such a situation, that could have happened in I think in many ways. So I'm not too shocked that I'm neither too shocked that it could come up through what's really a subduction zone, nor that the subduction zone in the last gasps really, also had fracture zones, and that's where magmatism comes up.
Okay. Would you mind stopping your share momentarily?
Stop share.
Thank you. This is always a pleasure, number one.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's so, it feels so cutting edge, and I can keep up because of the way that you're describing this stuff. So thank you, number one. And viewers, certainly we're coming to you, but I don't want to stop with Karin, and I think that I would like to go back and forth verbally just a little bit more about the orcas, involve Baja, BC, which is a major thrust of your brand new paper with Mitch, who I think is with us live. I think we've got a bunch of geologists watching here, which is an extra thrill. Hello, everybody. And you must have Edward's movie that we could look at together, or I can play with it on Keynote that I have. But let's just try verbally here a little bit. So the orcas, here's what I think I'm hearing. The resurrection is kind of a minor story. It seems it's small, it's brief in a history with the major structures of the Pacific Northwest. However, if we go to the Orcas Plate, we're going way back, hundreds of millions of years. We have subduction on both sides of the thing. North America is approaching this Caribbean-like Orcas Plate. And before you know it, Baja, BC is part of the Orcas. And much of Alaska's geology is tied to that Orcas reconstruction. Am I getting some of the major talking points from the significance of the Orcas Plate?
Yeah, that's what comes out of our then, that's how it has to have been.
Wow.
Because the Central Alaskan arcs, am I allowed to share, or would you rather not?
Please, no, please go back. I grant you permission. Yes, let's go back. Yeah, the ramifications of this Orca Plate, I'm slowly realizing kind of in the moment with you. This is really big for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for all of us.
So when you have a slab, there was an arc sitting there, and then you have to ask which arc terrains, what is that in geology, which arc terrains were sitting there.
Yes.
So where's my cursor? Okay, so we said here that was in the insular microcontinent, the Guerrero superterrane, and here these are the Farallon arcs. But what was here? Well, so then those must have been Central Alaska. So the Koyukuk arc, what's sandwiched between Arctic Alaska, which was there before, and Southern Alaska, which is Baja, BC. There's a middle part, and that's Cretaceous arcs, and so they must be sitting above this northern slab wall, because that's how it comes out. Because then North America, slowly rides along, and it accretes these arcs. That's Baja, BC, or insular.
Wow.
But as it goes, then this part of North America slowly overrides here, and then here, and then here, and so they all get smushed along the margin. But technically, if you think about how an arc is built, the arc terrains themselves are sitting in the overriding plate, right? So this is the subducting plate, and the Orcas Plate is the overriding plate. So the Alaskan arcs, the Koyukuk arcs, they are welded into this microplate, and you have to somehow then this plate has to disappear. And because it's a bit small, it actually has some options. One is to go north and subduct into Spencer's Yukon slab, for example, which
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
not on here. It could have maybe even gone into this big slab wall. It could have temporarily made a little subductions on here. It's hard to say, but in any case, somehow this gets squeezed out. But what's left are the arcs that are buoyant and welded into here, and they then end up here.
Where, yeah,
Here's Yukon. Mm.
yeah. Where? I'm sorry to interrupt. Where can I go find those two arc rocks today? Maybe that's a question more for Mitch. But we're up in central Alaska to find the arc rocks in the northern trench.
Yeah, it's what so the northern part of Alaska is Arctic Alaska. That's an older terrain, and then there's a
Mm-hmm.
suture.
Okay.
So one of the oldest parts of that is the Angayutram ophiolite.
Yes.
And then south of that, so this is Arctic Alaska here, and then south of that are these accreted arcs, and then there's this in the Yukon there's this it makes a sharp bend. It's an orocline.
Okay. Yeah.
It goes back again like this, and then Stephen Johnson said it does this again. So it's like a Z, like Zorro.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what he reconstructs in the Great Alaskan Terrain Wreck.
Exactly. Well, Steven's been watching these things. Maybe I need to get him on next. Man, I can't
Yeah.
stop with this. But how about the Farallon arc? I don't know where those rocks are today.
Yeah, so there's not that much to show for at the surface. There's the Pacific Rim terrain
Oh yeah.
that should be this arc, and then there's a lot of arc that's underplated under Vancouver Island,
Okay.
and that the lithoprobe experiment imaged, and
Hmm.
that's kind of that's kind of to be expected. So if we fast forward to 80 million years or so, so here you can see that North America is well underway overriding this. It has already overridden all of this. That's
Yeah.
gone. It has overridden this, and because the Orcas plate is this, so it's already eaten off a chunk of that. Maybe it's pushing it ahead of itself. Maybe it's already forcing it to subduct somewhere.
Hmm.
These arcs are really getting crushed against the Yukon margin now,
Yeah.
and this Farallon subduction in the Pacific Northwest, it's is also feeling is also feeling the crunch now. It's the arcs are in the overriding plate, so but still they will somehow suffer as because the end result of this will of course see here you can see that this slab that this Pacific this Farallon slab is still sitting a bit offshore, so
Yeah.
the Orcas plate is not quite gone, but the end result will be that around 50 million years, the Orcas plate is completely squeezed out, and this trench makes landfall and becomes the Cascadia arc.
Okay.
So
So
at that point, all of these arcs must be somewhere along the margin. The Pacific Rim terrain is the most obvious one. It's old enough. It's a Farallon arc, but a lot must be what's under subcreted under Vancouver Island.
Well, this is kind of where I lose it, I have to admit. If you wouldn't mind stopping your share. Karin, can I ask you permission to stop your share, please? Okay, good. We need a more formal arrangement here. We can go a couple different directions, but that business about where we're missing a lot of the Farallon arc, I think I'm hearing you say that, and it must be underneath Vancouver Island. I still feel like that.
Well,
It's my,
there is stuff under Vancouver Island.
there is.
Yeah, the lithoprobe experiment has imaged that. The
Okay.
the active seismic imaging.
Okay.
Mm.
Um,
It'll come up again in the next accretion event. Yeah, in some tens of
oh,
millions of years. Yeah.
good. Well, that'll be
Yeah.
fun. That'll be. I'll get all sorts of nostalgia seeing that stuff come back up to the surface. Nice. Um, okay, I think we should do one more major thing for sure, and then we can go where you want to go after that before we go to the live questions. Either I drive or you drive as far as Clinette's stuff, maps, going through time, and zeroing in on the Pacific Northwest here in North America. You want to drive or should I?
No, why don't you do that? Because actually
Okay.
G-plates, oddly enough, is not very good at displaying clean plate boundaries. So
Okay.
the new version has trench barbs and so I think you're probably showing the PDF, huh?
Kind of, I think. I got in Keynote. So thank you for the permission. Now here's the moment. I'm trying it for the second time. I tried it with Mike and it took forever, but so be patient with me, Karin. Yep. Don't want that. Now, what did I learn last time? Switch camera, and I just keep going here. Yeah. Oh, shit. How do I get to... Well, first of all, viewers, this is the brand new preprint from Karin and Mitch. And... which means it hasn't been, does it mean it hasn't been reviewed yet, Karin, by your peers and it's not ready for publication, but it's still okay to share?
That's right. I mean, it's become a custom like that you submit because we're now obliged to make everything open access, and so when we submit the paper, we put it on the preprint server, but you have to say it's not peer reviewed, so it'll surely change, and it's in review for the Penrose volume.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. There is a Penrose volume? So it's not an accident that Spencer has a preprint and Gene has a preprint. So there's some major volume coming out of the Penrose conference from last summer?
Yeah, exactly. So the organizers are organizing a special paper, a GSA special paper.
Wow. Okay. Well, I should have known that. I guess I didn't. I think you're going to have to drive, Karin, because I'm realizing I can't get to my Keynote because you're behind the Zoom window. Or maybe I can still do this. Anyway, I am so in love with this figure. This is a brand new figure from the new paper, Figure 1. Let's try this, Karin. How about I just try to narrate what I think I understand so far, and you can correct and add. So, viewers, we are looking at North America in millions of years ago and tracking the drift of the North American continent over slabs that have been found by Karin and others in the upper mantle and the lower mantle. Orange are slabs that were created by westward subduction, with a fixed oceanic trench out in the Proto-Pacific, which is stuff we have already talked about in prior episodes with Karin. But green is eastward subduction, which seems to be lost with major discussion of Karin's work. Everybody, oh, that's the westward subduction people. Yeah, whatever. I'm in California. Obviously, we have eastward subduction. And then suddenly Karin's like, we've got just as much eastward subduction as westward. Knock it off. So here's a new figure showing there's plenty of green oceanic slabs that were subducted eastward. All of these beneath a migrating, margin-hugging North America, Karin, or some of this is into a fixed trench eastward?
Yes, the two. So you can see there are two systems, a northern one and a southern one.
Yes.
So the northern one is that one we looked at in 3D rendering that enters the Cascadia Trench and then broadens out into slab. So that's all of this dark green. And that, for the longest time, so that's the Farallon plate. And, it is a bit ironic that in the end we were just seen as westward subduction, because as a geophysicist, the eastward subduction is, of course, absolutely inevitable because there are these isochrons. The Pacific plate is magnetized.
Yeah.
So we absolutely have to account for the isochrons. So eastward subduction is an absolute given. So, the thing was that once you account for all the isochrons that are there, all the Pacific plate, there's still lots of slab left.
Yes.
That didn't used to be a problem because we didn't used to image all these slabs. There was much less image. So we used to image only the orange ones and the shallow part of the Farallon North, right? And so then
Okay.
you sort of say, oh, this must be all the Farallon plate because we know the Farallon plate existed. And so then along came this big US array experiment. Suddenly we image all this extra slab.
Yeah.
And so now, once you've accounted for everything that's in the Pacific, there's still this yellow left.
Well,
And
I'm
so that
gonna.
led to the
Yeah.
conclusion they must all be much older. This is a longer memory of the mantle, and so that then this westward subduction um, it becomes a necessity.
It's
So,
just. It's just. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
but I haven't answered your question. So the twist on this story is, right. So there's always Farallon subduction. Always we have to, because there are isochrons, and we looked at this beautiful dipping slab, which is what's getting really sunny in southern France. So so that is the best documented in terms of isochrons part of the Farallon plate, and so that's this northern system. And so that is clearly Farallon plate, but it turns out it's set offshore because it's really far west. There's no way, North America was far away from it. And first you have to somehow make these orange slabs.
Mm.
But the second one, the Farallon South, that's what happens when this orange slab, when the westward subduction is finished, when this orange slab is stopping, it's accreted the insular microcontinent, but it keeps riding westward North America. So then it forces, it's just riding into a place where there is already oceanic seafloor that's sitting there but hasn't been subducting, and that is now forced to subduct. And so that's when that seafloor becomes part of the Farallon plate. We suddenly also see in the isochron, suddenly the Farallon plate is much bigger. And so now it's basically annexed what's there, and the Farallon plate is now subducting in both the northern system and the southern system in eastward subduction, and the southern part is it's an Andean style, it's a trench, it's along the margin, it makes the Sierra Nevada arc, the batholith stage of it, so it does what it should. But the northern one, ironically, just keeps sitting offshore for a long time until the Cascadia arc. The Cascadia arc is what marks its landfall, so it's only the Cascadia arc that's an Andean style arc, but everything before that in that slab was an offshore arc.
That's exactly where I need to go. I don't have it yet, but this offshore thing until the birth of the Cascades, essentially, that's the hook that I need to launch into this upcoming alphabet series that I'm doing this winter. So I'm going to get there with you. Maybe I'll try that again. Okay, I'm feeling bold. I'm going to try this one more time. I've never done this. And then if it doesn't work, we go to you. And then I promise, viewers, we're coming to you. We got more than 800 on a Sunday morning, Karin. Nice job. So
Nice.
What am I going to do? I'm going to stop the full screen of this thing. Wait, what if I do this? We can still hear you. Karin, can you still? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Maybe.
But I don't see a screen share in case
of course. Okay, so, oh, shit. All right, it's not going to work. I need for both of us to see with my slides. I'm not ready for that. So I think the last thing, you must have something that you can share in Zoom where we can see. Do you have Edward's thing? It doesn't have to be in G plates, but like going through the movie and stopping it to kind of overlap with the Mike Eddy discussion we had and the last few guests. Do you have anything like that we can go back and forth?
I can find it. Unfortunately, yesterday my computer suddenly crashed, and so now I would really have to look for them. But I don't know. Do you think the figure from our paper would do? It's not a movie, but it's
sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Also, if I would do it again, the Clannad reconstruction, and it's something we want, but it's it was a year of work for Edward, and so we don't have that time. So, but I would simplify it a bit, and that's kind of
okay.
What this. see here. Where
Oh,
are
wait a minute.
we? This here. So it's.
Oh, I've got an idea. If after you oh yeah, okay, yep. And then I can still get to my slides, I think, but it'll just be an unconventional
Okay.
way. But let's go with you first. This is a blast. I'm seeing a bunch of sorry Patricks in the live chat, so apparently I've been foul mouthed. I apologize.
Well, wait, let's wait. So, okay, so we were going to saying we were going from this state
Yes.
where everything is oceanic still here. So this is Northwest Pacific Farallon Trench. That's going to be the Cascadia Trench, but only once this margin has reached it, and that's
Oh,
only going to be at about 50 million years or so.
wow. That's
Well,
it.
actually, it's going.
That's it right there. That's it. That trench is going to. Could you just say a little bit more about that? Say that again. That trench offshore, that trench to the left, the westward dipping trench
Eastward
underneath.
dipping.
You're right. Eastward dipping trench underneath Orcas is going to be the Cascadia Trench once North America
Yes,
plows over it.
yes. And so
Wow.
in this slab, so in this one here, it's roughly, it's roughly
Oh.
this part of the slab is
Oh.
against subducted against an Andean margin. So subducted like it does here at the moment, subducted under the continent. But everything that was deeper was subducting out in the ocean because you
Got
have to
it.
put the surface further to the east. And so then this, which was always in this absolute position, at that point was sitting in the Pacific Basin because this continent was away. It was still too far east.
Holy shit. Yeah, I see it. Okay,
And
that
if you look at, if you look at this slab more in detail, it does have a lot of complications. We were starting to get there with what
right,
does it mean that it's Yellowstone, and I don't have the answer to that. But
right.
there's clearly disruptions in this slab, and what we're saying in this paper also is that these disruptions, and that's also to do with having Baja BC go by, but it's not a completely continuous thing. There were some problems, and that must be a reflection of this long history of the North America starting to touch the eastern edge of the Orcas plate, starting to push it. So this trench here gets disturbed already, although it's still sitting a bit offshore. It probably tries to retreat a bit. What happens to the Orcas plate is less clear. Does it actually get squeezed out to the north, or does it just push back the trench, and a bit of everything probably? And then the subduction here clearly becomes disrupted. Until finally, the Orcas plate is really squeezed out and gone, and the trench can make landfall, and it makes the slab. We've already heard from, I think you discussed it with Jean or so. It's not a very respectable slab, but it's I mean it's clearly what's going in now, and it's an Andean style trench.
Okay, can you stop your share, please?
Mhm.
That was big for me, and I think for many. 50 million years ago, North America is overriding a trench that has a much longer history in the Pacific. I didn't have
I
that till
mean,
right now.
yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it is, and I'm surprised, nobody has complained about that or reacted to that, because it's also something we've said all along, but I guess,
God.
and it's very clear it has to be so, because I mean you have to account for 180 million years of isochrons, and those isochrons belong to the northernmost part of the Farallon plate, the part that later splits off, well, first splits off the Izanagi plate, later the Kula plate. So it's clear that there's these 180 million year isochrons. The oldest ones belong to that slab. So it's clearly an old slab, but it's so far east it must have set offshore. And that is what we imaged newly in 2008 before this US array experiment. The deep part under the Pacific Northwest was just not imaged. So nobody had to consider. Everybody was worrying, how do you get from the Pacific Northwest Trench into these deep slab walls under the eastern seaboard? How do you
Right.
transport slab? But really, we were missing this deep part that's so far east and west, and and then the added complication of now having too much slab is what led to this. It's inevitable that it's two subduction systems.
It must be so frustrating for you if you've been telling some of these major stories since 2008 or even earlier maybe, and having folks like really listening and thinking they get it, and then they don't clearly get it. Like, I'm speaking for myself, just in the course of the last hour. Do you feel like many of the major things that you're saying now you've been saying for the last 15 years? Or what part of your stories today are semi-new based on going to the Penrose or some other things that you've been thinking about?
No, the trenches, we've always been saying that since 2013. I mean, even before, but at the time I wasn't talking with Mitch yet, and not imagining that westward subduction would even be possible, because the geophysicist community I had never heard about it. And so then just all of these slabs, I tried to interpret it as eastward subduction. So the trenches were always there, and the slabs. And since 2013, we've also said yes, and the Pacific Northwest set offshore, but somehow nobody seemed to be bothered by that. And so the Penrose conference was great to refocus on eastward subduction, and we hadn't really thought in detail about how to maneuver Baja BC past these two subduction zones, the northern Farallon and the southern Farallon, because
Right.
if you go with the mainstream story and always have a trench against the margin, it's very hard to spirit, a microcontinent north. This becomes easier with these disrupted subduction zones, but it's still, you have to still work it out. How could it, So this paper makes a proposition how that worked, and so that's the main new thing there.
What is the timing that you have currently in your mind for that sprint to the north of Baja BC? When do you want to start it, and when is it over?
Well, from the paleomag, it must have happened between 90 million years and 50 million years. And in between, there are relatively few constraints. In the Clannad model, we decided to implement the sprint fairly late, but that was a choice. I mean, it wasn't really constrained. For example, now Gene Humphreys, his paper for the Penrose volume, for example, points out that if Baja BC set offshore, then, for example, the Schatzki Plateau couldn't really have gotten to California, to the ranches, so you should start moving earlier. So one could move earlier, although I guess we're not very bothered by Baja BC sitting offshore either, because you can still build the Sierra Nevada batholith. But anyway, so there's some flexibility. You just have to do it within the 40 million years.
Okay, yeah. I think final thing, and this is what Mike Eddy got into last time, I just realized that 50 million years ago, we have this, for lack of a better phrase, shift of one trench to the next. That old trench offshore is now the Cascadia Trench starting. What do you think of Mike's comments about a major plate reorganization 50 million years ago? Is that a worldwide thing? Is that a Pacific Basin thing? Did it happen at all?
Yeah, the 50 million year event is well accepted in the plate reconstruction community, because it's recorded in the seafloor spreading in the isochrons. So the spreading ridges can react very quickly to a reorganizing somewhere else. They immediately feel it if it's somewhere else, and somehow 50 million years really is recorded almost globally.
Okay.
I mean, that still doesn't tell you what was cause and effect, but it was something that rippled through.
Okay. You don't have a second screen going with this live broadcast, do you?
No.
Okay. Well, that was my last idea for showing these slides. But I think maybe after we'll do viewers, we're coming to you. Go ahead and start typing in your uppercase questions for Karin.
But I did want to. I would like to show you how Baja BC passed.
Good.
Yeah, but because that's the upshot of the Penrose paper.
You have permission to share your screen.
Thank you. So Baja BC is
can we go full screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Baja BC.
Yeah, this is great.
We're not totally sure what all was part of Baja BC because of this problem of finding the fault.
Mm-hmm.
But so in order to make a model like where's my cursor? Like Edward did, or like we did with Edward, you have to commit to some place where you're mainly going to shear, because you have to, I mean, these terrains that are now here used to be in the south. That's what the Paleomag says.
Mm-hmm.
And so mainly we decided that it runs, the Baja BC fault must have run here through the Cache Creek terrain, which is an older ocean that closed, and then under the flood river basalts, Columbia River flood basalts, you have a lot of options. It could have gone up to Idaho, could have been as far as Idaho or further here, and then you have to do something in California. And so we say, okay, everything that's west of this is Baja BC. And so then how do we get this past? And so this is a snapshot at the beginning of when we could start moving it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see here, this is again this trench, that westward subducting trench, which North America at this point has already partly extinguished. This is overridden. And these red ones are all the terrains that used to be strung up, the arcs, the Central Alaska arcs that used to be peacefully here doing their arc thing until North America comes along. And so then they get pushed and they slowly accrete. And that is the Johnston terrain wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So they get dislodged from their substrate, which is this Orcas microplate. On this side here, we still have the Farallon plate, the Pacific Northwest Farallon plate going in. So here's a little bit of arc terrain. This is the Pacific Rim. And here then set arcs, which are presumably under Vancouver Island.
Wow.
And at this point, because North America is now abutting this small plate, Baja BC is also abutting this plate. And it's sort of detached now from North America because we know there was a fault. So really functionally, this is more part of this microplate now. It's transferred onto this plate. It's the plate boundary runs here. And now you can imagine this plate, well, we know it has to disappear, and it can be quite mobile because it's small. So it could disappear to here into Spencer's Yukon slab, which actually, after seeing his episode, I like maybe better again. I suspect it went to here, but because there's also a candidate here. It could even have gone into the shallowest part of this western slab. It's hard to say. But in any case, you can see North America will continue squeezing out this plate. This trench makes landfall and here it becomes the Cascadia Trench. You can see how this angle is forcing the Alaska orocline, because here comes Baja BC now and sort of in the wake south of this moves up here and they all get squished against the margin and become Alaska. Here's Arctic Alaska.
So your slabs do not tell any story of the orcas subducting beneath North America.
It's hard because it becomes very small scale. There's basically too many candidates for where this plate could have gone.
Hmm.
It's a fairly small volume of seafloor, and there are pre-existing trenches that it could just be added to, so it could just add to this big slab a little more in its very northern edge. It could be part of this of this system that in 3D that we've looked at for quite a while. It's imaging methods may meet their limits there.
Yeah. Can you please stop your share, Karin? The viewers might take us back to more slides. I'm not sure, but I want to be respectful of your time. What time is it there, by the way? After 6? After 7?
It's 6 p.m. It's
okay.
6 p.m.
Right. Yeah. Well, to give us your time on a Sunday at dinner time, going into the office, no less. Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, but it's a pleasure, Nick. It's always a pleasure with you.
Thank you. We're going to do you have another 15 minutes?
Sure.
Viewers, we're going to come to you. I know I asked earlier, but I'm probably not going to be able to scroll back that far. So please, viewers, right now, ask your question for Karin. We'll try to do as many as we can in the next 15 minutes. Then I think we're going to stop and say goodnight to Karin. And then I think I am going to go to my slides and just spend more time struggling now that I can get to that screen. And I want to apply what I think we've learned with Karin to maps in the Pacific Northwest here, using other things that I've seen. The device 9. Karin, can you elaborate on the cooling the mantle via subduction? Is this regulating interior temperature like cooling a reactor?
Yes, subduction is the way that the Earth cools. It has heat from its origins. It also produces new heat, the radioactive elements in the mantle that decay. And so every hot body wants to cool against the cold, against space. And so in the Earth, subduction is the mechanism that does that.
Thank you. Elaine wonders, is your model compatible with Basil Tikoff's transpression models?
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch Basil's show. I think from my perspective, we're maybe not so far apart anymore. Basil has thought much more about, what that means for the geology on the margin and how transpression is also conditioned by pre-existing structure in the margin, which he knows much more about. I guess I'm more interested in, at the Penrose, I discussed with Basil. He's worried about California and that you cannot have that you cannot build the various stages of the Sierra Nevada arc. We think that's quite doable. That's also part of this paper. So I think the transpression. Yeah, maybe the question needs to be elaborated. I don't see any. Certainly Baja BC is transpression. I don't know if they're any more specific about the question.
Robert wonders, does the subducting plate material meet significant resistance below 700 kilometers depth?
Yeah, it is. We know that the lower mantle is much more viscous than the upper mantle, so less fluid. So it's probably 10 or 100 times more viscous. So it does feel like a backstop. It's not a totally hard backstop because clearly the slab goes through, but it gets slowed down. It cannot, and that's why it thickens. Surely that's the reason. That's expected. So yes, it does. And we also know this from earthquakes. So we know that first when the slab goes in, we see earthquakes that are extensional, but then the really deep earthquakes, they become compressional. So we know it's feeling that.
Thank you. Liz in London asks, does tomography show the movement of North America is not driven by subducting plates? i.e., does it move continually in same direction while oceanic plates subduct and break off? Slab pull not moving North America? Question mark.
Slab pull is the dominant effect. We know that present day almost all plate motion is explained by where the trenches are. So that's one of the clearest results in geophysics. It's really the trenches that are moving plates. And it's also nice that in this westward subduction model, there is this pull, right? So in the beginning, there's lots and lots of pull because there's all of this continuous arc of westward subducting. Now, as that slowly gets overridden, there's less and less pull. But even today, there's still some pull in the Caribbean. So the Antilles arc is connected to the North American plate, and so it's still pulling westward.
Thank you. Will wonders, Iceland and Silesia, are they a similar process? Is Iceland a kink in the North Atlantic rift forming a hotspot?
Well, Iceland is a real classical plume. It's far away from all the slabs. It has its classic flood basalt at 50 million years. It has hotspot tracks. So then it depends on, whether you think that Silesia or Yellowstone is close enough to being a normal plume. It's clearly something that's producing a lot of flood basalts in a very short time. So it must be sourcing from a big volume of mantle. It's not a crustal or a very shallow thing because you need a big volume of mantle to source so much basalt from in such a short time. And so that needs some heat from the mantle and some deep melting. But why that upwelling comes from inside a slab pile or goes through a slab pile, I mean, that's different from Iceland.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why people are so comfortable putting the Yellowstone mantle plume out in the Northeast Pacific. The amount of basalt in Silesia and Yakutat together is just, I don't know how you do that just in a simple spreading ridge. So you need something like a mantle plume, right? Even though you're at a boundary?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, plumes are a wet phenomenon. So there's volatiles, I mean, meaning water, CO2 that's involved in producing so much melt. And I guess, really a theme of your show has been how there's so much volcanism in the Pacific Northwest, and it's always something wet, right? It's a flat slab, supposedly, that was under the lithosphere, and that hydrates the lithosphere. And then when it peels off, it's easier to melt because it's all wet. You can, yeah. So the Yellowstone, and the subduction, a subducting slab, in principle, is very wet when it goes in. But then nominally, it cannot take that water down into the mantle because the upper mantle is nominally anhydrous, so supposedly it cannot take its water down. Whereas if it could take it down to the transition zone can hold tons of water. A transition zone is from about 400 to 700 kilometers. So it's estimated that if the minerals in the transition zone are fully carrying all the water they could, then it would be 7 oceans worth, something like that, several oceans worth of water in the transition zone. But the question is, how do you get it down? But of course, there are many mineral phases, sort of kind of the dirt and grime that goes down. That's never been researched. Also alphabet phases also, and they could well be hydrous and get carried down to 400 kilometers. And once the water's there, it's all fine. It'll be there. And so, if that Yellowstone plume is sourcing that water, it could come up with geothermal heat and that water, and then as soon as it gets to the surface, it melts very happily and makes these voluminous. So it seems like it must have something to do with the water, because that's also what a subduction zone is. It's a water system.
I mean, at one point, I think you suggested I do an alphabet on mantle plumes, and I can see what you mean. I mean, there's a lot of mystery and a lot of new data that I think most are unaware of. Fascinating. Let's do 3 more, and then we will say good evening to you. Why not? Tony wonders, any thoughts about asteroid strike during Paleo-Eocene thermal maximum kicking off some of the global plate shifts? It always comes up in these forums, things coming from outer space. Is it worth thinking about any of that? You can pass.
Well, I think there's no. I mean, the at 65 million years there was a big asteroid impact, and there's a lot of isochron data, because that's how we would see reorganizations, because they're very sensitive recorders, and it's not obvious.
Not obvious in the seafloor isochrons that something happened 65 million years ago. Interesting. Wow. Okay. That's a good answer. Is there a slab fragment under Idaho, or is that thick crust? That goes back to Gene's episode and then Basil, and pretty major differences of opinion about the Idaho slab curtain. Your thoughts?
I don't know. It shows up. The slab curtain shows up on the tomographies on Gene's, on mine, on basically everybody's. So there's a seismically fast feature. It never occurred to me that it would not be a slab, because it sort of fits in the overall geometry. But I cannot. I have no direct way of distinguishing that. What I do know is that the group of Gene Humphreys and Brendan Schmand at the time, so his grad students, they did a very careful work of correcting for surface, what's known about the surface, about the crust, the lithosphere, which is not directly resolved. So that they did put much more care into this than I did, where I start more or less interpreting from 400 kilometers down. So I think Gene's data will be as good as it gets on that. But it's probably from there. It's probably still interpretation for both of them. Yeah.
Let's do one more. This comes from geologist Sky Cooley, and then you can add some closing thoughts if you like, if you feel like we didn't quite get to a couple of major things that you wanted to do here today, Karin. Sky asks simply, did the Yellowstone plume cross the Cascadia Trench?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because okay, if we do this again.
Yeah.
Here.
Nice job, Sky. She's going to the slides.
So let's see. So okay, so this is, the subduction used to be in here, right? So what you see in the red there in the background, well, what we see here is the oldest Cascadia system. So if we look at that again from the top, so that's the red there, and then it becomes a bit complicated here. But at that point, Yellowstone sits offshore. And but as we go shallower, the slab goes over it, right? And today it's here. So I don't have the last 200 kilometers here, but you have to continue it to here. So yes, it's set just offshore. So that's good for Silesia, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. Right.
And it does have, there is a little hollow. If you look down into this, you can see there is a place for the hot material, and we can also look at we can look at so far I've always shown the seismically fast stuff, which is slab, which is cold, but we can also plot all the hot stuff under North America. So, and that is again looking from the core mantle boundary up. So what do we see here? We see that this bluish stuff, that's the asthenosphere under the western part of the continent. It's very hot. Under the oceans, the asthenosphere gets even more intense. There is, interestingly, above the slab wall in the east, it's seismically slow. And then we have few things that reach deep. So we have few things that are red, and it's actually not super clear what that is. But then there is, oh, and this red thing got in the wrong place. But there's a little, hold on here. So this thing is what's wedged into the Yellowstone slab, and this is sitting under Yellowstone. So
Okay.
there is something that is seismically slow as it should be, but it's dwarfed by, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
by the slab.
The
So it's
last thing I'll ask. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
yeah, it's sitting in this hollow there or under there.
Yeah. So one slide back to the pink thing. Is that then one of the two trenches bounding Orcas?
Yes,
That guy right there.
this is the oldest Farallon plate, the
Okay, yeah.
northern Farallon plate, and this is the where the Alaskan arcs are sitting, and this
That
is where insular superterrain and Guerrero is sitting.
that's the big breakthrough for me today. I mean, it just takes enough effort to finally make things get into my skull. That's the one that works
Well,
for
thanks
me.
for saying that.
Okay, would you please stop your share and we can say goodbye. Thank you very much for your time today. And I felt like this was a whole new set of ideas that we haven't really discussed much with you before. And it fits so beautifully into what we've been doing. And if this new proposal with Mike Eddy gets funded, I'm going to be probably going up to Alaska and thinking a lot about Alaska for the next year after I do this Cascade stuff. So I'll probably be bugging you again because this Orcas thing tying directly to Alaska geology, that seems pretty big to me. And so I'm trying to say...
Yeah, it'll be my pleasure, of course. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. I'm coming back again. You're too good. So thank you for your time yet again, and enjoy the rest of your evening there in France. Thank you, Karin.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks very much.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye. That was Karin Sigloch from the south of France. Hope that you enjoyed that conversation. I did. I'm sure that you did too. And if you didn't, what can I say? It doesn't get much better than that. And I think I happened to see somebody ask, what's this got to do with Idaho? So, can I address that? Not much is the answer. But I'm putting the word Idaho in all of these episodes because this is a mini-series of programs dealing with plate tectonics prior to the birth of the Cascade volcanoes. And I have to say, up until the last two episodes, Mike Eddy and Karin Sigloch, I was all set to talk resurrection plate and the major role of the resurrection plate and the migrating triple junction. I thought I had it all straight, and now I don't know what I'm going to do. But that's a positive thing, because these last two episodes have taken me, at least, and maybe you as well, in a completely new direction. So it's my job to figure out how to deal with all that. And it will be a pleasure to try to figure that out. Before I forget, there's at least one more episode coming in this Idaho series. And that's this coming Friday, September 20th. Vic Camp will continue talking about the Yellowstone mantle plume and the Farallon plate, and I've asked Vic if he wouldn't mind watching these episodes, including this one, and we will talk about ideas about the Yellowstone mantle plume younger than 50 million years ago. In other words, after North America runs over the top of this Yellowstone mantle plume, where is it? Why isn't it obvious where it is? And the short answer is there's a subducting Farallon plate over the top of the thing in Vic's model. So at least there's one more coming. I don't know if Vic's going to want that one live or if that one's going to be a recorded interview like we did with Jeff Tepper, but that's maybe the end of what I'll do. I need to take a break from this series, and I mean, I'm already up to like half an alphabet, totally unplanned. I got to take a break before we start the Cascades A to Z this coming winter. I kind of feel like I want to stop right now, but I don't think I am, because now I can actually get to my slides, and if you're willing, I just want to think out loud just a little bit more. And Karin's heading home to enjoy a quiet evening with her family, so I'm not going to try to get her back on the horn, but let's just try this, and I'll need to work with Nat the Wonder Boy to figure out how I can do my keynote slides as a shared screen within Zoom when Zoom is taking up the same screen. I didn't realize that was a problem until, obviously, I was sitting there with the Karin Sigloch. So let's go ahead. I promise not to go 20 minutes here. This is Karin Sigloch and Mitch Mahalanuk more than 10 years ago. And here it is. I'm a slow learner, but I think many North American, okay, I'm going to stop hang on. I almost said it with her here, but I want to say it now. I think so highly of Karin and Mitch that I personally think it's just a matter of time. How many years more are we going to have to wait for North American geologists to catch up and to lock in to what Karin and Mitch are saying? It's elegant, it's simple, but you look at these images and there's just so much new, it's radical. It's so much new to absorb that, you know, Karin has admitted today, like, she expected way more pushback on this or that, and nobody's saying anything. I think they just can't quite get it. At least I couldn't quite get it until this morning. Couldn't quite get what? Here's the frickin' Orcus Plate with westward subduction into it and eastward subduction into it, the Farallon Arc and the, whatever she said, Alaska Arc. And here's North America drifting in, but this is 140 million years ago. This long-lived Orcus Plate is still out here. These are the volcanic arc rocks that are going to end up in Alaska. They're still offshore. Now, this very end of the program, I'm going to be asking more questions than saying anything coherent. Is this the trench that's eventually going to... What? Is this the trench that's going to eventually become the Cascadia Trench when North America finally crosses over this thing? Okay, I'm razzle dazzle. Okay, so look at the red wieners out here. Now we got links all folded up. Back, 110, 75. Back and forth, 110, 75. 110, 75. That's the Great Alaska Terrain Wreck of Stephen Johnston. I don't know, maybe I'll try to get Stephen on. So there goes that trench, apparently, but we still have this trench and this trench, long-lived, boundary between the Orcus and the Farallon. No, she doesn't have spreading ridges out here. She's got subduction zones. She's got subduction zone out. She doesn't have spreading ridges. And suddenly we are talking about Kula, but question mark. And the Pacific taking over the Kula by the time we get to our time frame we've been talking about here today. So my plan was to run those by her, and then here, I'll just play this first. If you're a longtime viewer of this series, you've already seen this a million times. In fact, it exists for you to download and play it for yourself. I'll just sit here and stare at my beautiful hair this morning as this thing's going on. No, I won't. So, again, we're kind of culminating from past winter programs. This is Baja, BC. This is Crazy Eocene. This is Edward Clenette's movie, supervised by Karin when she was teaching at Oxford in England. But it's the orcas here that I was ignoring until this morning. There's our doubly subducted guy. And then suddenly this, uh-oh. Why did that trench go away and show up again? My hair is epic today. I was just kidding. So I was going to sleep in till 6:30. I had my alarm set for 6:30 this morning. I was just going to get up, have a quick bite, shower, and head in here and just start the live stream. Well, guess who jumps on my chest at 4:30? Bijou the cat. So I was up 2 hours earlier than I wanted to be. And so I started looking at Edward Clenette's movie over and over and over again. And I finally decided I'm going to screenshot each of these years. 54 million years ago, 53 million years ago, and I'm going to show it to Karin. And it's going to tie in with what we've been doing the prior 5 episodes. Well, it didn't quite work due to I probably could have shared it, but I couldn't figure it out. So I want to do it now. Oh yeah, love this figure. Don't get distracted. Okay, so I'm zeroing in now on that movie. I just told you the story, right? So Bijou and I are screenshotting these things. So here's 54 million years ago. Spreading ridge. This looks pretty familiar. Kula, I think. Kula, I think. Farallon. And resurrection, I guess. Spreading ridge. So you remember, Spencer Fuston likes 2 spreading ridges, and although I don't think, does he? Does he like subduction? Oh, these guys like subduction. Okay, this is basically Karin's group. I'm going to shut up and just do this. 53. Yakutat, pink. Seleucia, green. Why is it so small? I don't know. And that's why I said what I said to Karin at one point this morning. I anticipated doing this with her, and I was giving her permission to go. I specialize in the planet. I can't address all these little details that you're asking me about with the coast of Oregon or something. So I was trying to encourage her. She could say that because you can't be expected to have such expertise in all the oceans of the world and then be able to say something local. And yet, I wanted to do this anyway with her. I think this is California, Oregon. Shit. Can't quite tell where we are. I think this is California, Oregon, and then Washington right in here. 53 million years ago, Yakutat and Seleucia on a spreading ridge, presumably Yellowstone mantle plume here. Alaska is partially constructed. Keep going, boy. 52. 51. Uh-oh, we're doing some Baja, BC stuff now. And then by 49, Baja, BC is in place. Now this looks like the Strait of Juan de Fuca right here. And there's Mike's spreading ridge going beneath Vancouver Island. And Yakutat on its way north. And Seleucia being accreted here. I guess Mitch wants subduction way the hell in here. I don't get that. This is me advancing now. 48, 47, 46, 45, 44. What's this got to do with Idaho? Nothing. What's it got to do with the Cascades? Not sure, but probably not much. But it's still trying to think hard about which plates were where in the few millions of years before 46 million years ago, the birth of the Cascade Volcanic Arc. I cannot stop. Play this one more time for you. In fact, I can. Now I'm in control. Let's try one more thing, and then I should quit. I think we're going hiking today. Here is the doubly subducting margins of the Orcus plate, I think. Right? Angaiuchum or Angaiuchum on one side. So this is the Orcus. I don't know what this is going to end up in Mexico. Still confused by the Farallon. I'm confused by more and more. Anyway, this is the star of the show today as far as I'm concerned, the Orcus. And it's the Orcus that envelops the Baja BC thing. They still don't have Baja. They're starting Baja BC 70. There it goes. And ends 48. Something like that. A toast to you. Thank you for joining us today. We still have over 700. Here's to Karin Sigloch. Here's to Mitch Mahalanuk, if you're still with us, Mitch. Here's to your health. And here's to the health of your family and friends. Thanks, everybody. It's been a real pleasure. I was nervous today. I remember the first time I'd had Karin on, I was afraid of her. I had never met her. The thick German accent, I'm like, oh my God. And she was just delightful. And it's easy to get on a roll with her now, especially after hanging out with her in person last summer. So she's a very special guest who continues to pump a lot of life into what's going on here. And so I'm a fan. And I know that many of you are as well. Why not? One last thing. No, I'm not. I'm gonna get out of this. Thank you, Edward. And remind you that if you go to nickzentner.com, click on the word Cascades. I remind you that these papers down here this list continues to grow, and these are mostly tied to the field videos that I've been doing. But this is the Idaho miniseries papers, and 3 papers today. Here's the Karin and Mitch brand new preprint for your enjoyment, including, I love this photo, figure 1. This is the 2-page Yellowstone plume piece that we started with today by Karin. This is the crumpled Farallon with the rising Yellowstone plume coming right up through it. And then Karin also alerted me that a paper that's almost 10 years old is kind of a survey paper of work that's been done in the ocean basins of the world since Pangaea's breakup. And there are attempts to go year by year, or decade by decade, you know what I mean. And I remember seeing this almost 10 years ago when it first came out, and I'm like, great, I finally have these maps that I want. And then I realized that's just one group. There's 72 different groups with 72 different versions of what the plates looked like long ago in the oceans. Hence the obsession. Thank you, everybody. I love you. And goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday if you're in North America. And I'll see you at some point down the road. But we are close to the end, I think, of the Idaho miniseries. And what a series it has been. Thank you, I love you, and goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Can't remember how to do fireworks. Oh, it's tracking me besides. Goodbye. End stream.